If a little green is good, more is even better. Now, back to Green is Good with John Shigarian and Mike Brady.
Welcome back to Green is Good, and we're so excited and honored today to have Chantal Cooke. She's the co-founder and the host of Passion for the Planet, which is the top green radio show in the UK. Welcome from across the world, Chantal, to Green is Good.
Thank you, and welcome as well.
Yeah, I guess we're on the air in England right now, too, so this is really very cool.
So, Passion for the Planet, which Mike and I always talk about. What we love about what you're doing, Chantal, is that, you know, when you talk about your mission statement, you provide solutions for a green and healthy lifestyle, and that's what we do on this show. This is a positive show about solutions. Tell us, what inspired you in 2002 to launch and start Passion for the Planet?
It was really because I think these kind of things are really important. And although I know that sounds very worthy and sort of, you know, finger wagging, it's just actually there's some amazing stuff out there. There's some amazing ways in which you can live a healthier, more ethical, more sustainable, more fulfilling life. But often what the problem is we don't know what those options are. And if you don't know what you don't know, it's a bit of a problem, if you like. So I think radio is a really good medium for letting people know what opportunities and what options are available to them, and then obviously allowing them to go and make the decisions that are right for them. And I think often radio's used just, you know, for certainly in the UK anyway, for lots of sort of, you know, tittle-tattle and celebrity gossip and things, and you listen to a few hours of it and your brain's gone dead. So I wanted to create something that had useful, inspiring information that people could then take on board and do with what they wanted to. You know, it's entirely up to them what they do, but I think the key thing is to know what your opportunities are and what the options available to you are, and I think that's what Passion for the Planet is about. It's about good radio, but also hopefully inspiring you as well.
Wonderful. And for our listeners out there that are in front of a computer right now or have an iPad or something, just so they could see and hear, Chantal's amazing site, radio show, www.passion, Passion, fortheplanet.com. She also has another great URL, passionforfreshideas.com. So, Chantal, how long is your show and how many times a week does it air in the UK?
Well, the great thing about Passion for the Planet is it's actually a whole station. So we're 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Wow. So you can tune in whenever you like, and you're going to hear Passion for the Planet type stuff, if you like.
Gosh.
Which is basically a mixture of music and interviews with, you know, experts and sort of leading thinkers in those fields.
So you mean Mike and I, if we can just make Green is Good radio around the clock, and this could be our life? I mean, the whole thing? I mean, you're giving us a whole new perspective on this whole radio business here. So how's it go?
That's certainly what my business partner and I have done, yes. Made it our whole lives.
That's amazing. So tell us, on a business, because we have a lot of entrepreneurs that listen, and that's fascinating. So how is it going? Like when you started in 2002, before in America, at least before the Green Revolution hit, and Al Gore won an Emmy, a Nobel Peace Prize, and an Academy Award, and before we passed that critical tipping point here, we know you're way ahead of us in Europe and in the UK. And, in terms of DNA and cultural speaking, the Green Revolution. How did people accept it in 2002, and how is it going now as a business venture?
In 2002, we definitely got some funny looks from people. They were like, what? You know, that's just a bit niche, isn't it? A bit weird. And they kind of expected us all to be running around wearing sandals and hemp and things like that. And of course, lots of people thought the station would be very worthy and preachy and things. But we've made it sort of our mission, if you like, to make sure that it's none of those things. So our sort of strap line is, no chanting, no preaching, and no knitting your own muesli, because that's definitely not what you're going to get on Passion for the Planet. It's really good music, it's entertaining, interviews and so on. And because we've always gone in that direction of saying, actually, this is mainstream, and okay, it might not have been mainstream in 2002, but we wanted it to behave as though it was and always will be. That, I think, has always helped us, because we've become aspirational as opposed to, as I said, worthy, which is, no one likes that. It's just boring. So in the beginning, I have to say it was quite difficult, but because we had quite a niche audience, which was basically people who were interested in that area, it meant that we actually had something to, if you like, hook ourselves onto, and a reason people to talk to us and come to us. Then after the Stern report in the UK, which was a big turning point for sort of green issues, when suddenly they put money on, what not being sustainable was going to cost us in the future, suddenly green became the big thing. And obviously from then, our awareness obviously jumped up and so on. But what is more challenging in some ways now is that because the big brands and green companies came to us originally to advertise because they wanted to reach our green audience, now, of course, they actually want to reach a much bigger, more mainstream audience. And so, ironically, it in some ways gets harder for us now than it was in the beginning. But in another way, I'm not too upset about that, because what it really says is we've kind of done our job. You know, we're not needed as much. And I'm not saying I want to, shut up shop or anything, because I don't. I love what I do. But actually, if there came a point in the future where we really weren't needed because everyone was talking about this stuff and it was just so much part of the population psyche, then maybe it would be time to move on and do something different. And actually, that would be a good day.
What did you grow up? Did your parents raise you to be aware of the environment, or is it something you got along the way, or where did this inspiration and epiphany come from?
I think a lot of it came from my grandparents. They were very into sort of plants and things like that. So my grandparents were actually some of the first people to bring cacti into the UK, and they founded a cacti society. And so I think a lot of that was kind of wandering around the garden and playing with the plants and those sorts of things. And my grandmother would take me out feeding the birds, and nothing particularly spectacular. But I suppose for someone growing up in London,
right,
that kind of look at nature is like, oh gosh, there are animals out there and they live amongst us and so on, which at that age was sort of quite a revelation. So I think a lot of it was that. But equally, my parents as well have always been much more they take responsibility type people, and I think that's a large part of what the Green Movement is about. It's about recognising that actually we have a responsibility and that our actions have an impact, and that impact can be either positive or negative. So I've always been brought up very much to take responsibility for what I do and to think about my impact on other people. Now, you can't always do anything about that, but I think you should at least be mindful of it. So I think it was just sort of part of my upbringing, which then, I guess, could have gone in any direction, but I just love animals, and I love the way plants sort of survive no matter what you chuck at them. I just think those sort of things are fascinating, and I think that's really where it came from.
Well, I think also, you're talking about your parents and your grandparents, and I can imagine you as a small girl growing up in England and seeing your very first cactus for the very first time, and then learning more about cacti, which are obviously not native to the British Isles, and that starts a whole set of questions and starts you on a whole wonder trip, like wandering around, as John says so many times. You wonder and you wander, and that probably helped to, as you say, just really form a connection with the rest of the planet in general.
I think that's true, and because my grandparents had so many cacti, they had these huge greenhouses in the back garden, and there was a part of me that was fascinated by them and how they would, you don't need any water for them, and then they'd suddenly produce a flower, but also slightly repelled by them as well, because obviously as a child I was constantly wanting to touch things, and that's not a good idea with a cactus. But also lots of succulents where you can grow them just by breaking off a leaf and bunging it in the soil. And you can imagine for sort of, a small child, the fact that I could actually grow my own plant just by bunging a leaf in a pot. I mean, that's really exciting.
Hey, last Chantal, you're a huge success. Obviously, the last 8 years, you've grown in visibility and you've become a real leader in the whole sustainability movement. Last year, you were appointed London Leader in Sustainability. What does that mean, London Leader in Sustainability? That sounds like a very serious appointment.
It is actually, and it is something I'm really proud of. Its second year was last year, and what they do is they appoint a small group of people who are recognised basically for their contribution towards communicating and taking action for sustainability in London. And so it's kind of an honour for you to get it, obviously, and you remain a London leader kind of for life, if you like, which is very exciting, and it means you can be involved in those sorts of things. It's done by the Sustainable Development Commission within London, and it's approved through the Mayor's office. Perfect. And as part of that, what you do is you're kind of giving a human face to sustainability. So obviously what they want to achieve is for other people to be able to look at the London leaders and go, well, hang on, they're just ordinary people and they're doing something, and I could do something too. So my project, for example, because you have to do a project as part of your role as a London leader, right. My project was to encourage people to eat less meat, but there were other projects which were about getting people involved in community sports and others about turning derelict land on an industrial estate into an orchard and those kind of things. So it was all about little projects with a human face that would hopefully involve and inspire people to be more sustainable.
Well, speaking of that, what does that mean? What can be done? You have a wonderful visibility because of all your great work and your radio platform and your web platform. What can be done to engage people with green issues even more than is being done today? What do you see is the next step in the green revolution, both in the UK and on this side of the pond in the US?
I think it's about making it more aspirational. So I think sometimes we tend to have gone down, particularly in the beginning, it's all doom and gloom, and if we don't do this, we're all going to die. But at the same time, that's too big a problem in a way. And I kind of go, well, I can't do anything about that. Whereas if you can make it something that's aspirational and fun, even if it's not necessarily to do with being green, and if you like, the byproduct, the side effect is that it's greener, I think that's an important way to go. And I also think to be more positive, and I think that is changing in the UK now, which is a good thing. But up until quite recently, it really has been so negative. It's always been about the bad news. And so, bad news paralyzes us. It doesn't inspire us. It makes us fearful and small.
You're right.
Whereas actually good news about things that people are doing and things that you could do yourself, or like when you hear a story about somebody who rescued somebody else or set up an orphanage in Ghana for children or something, those are the kind of things that lift your heart and make you go, wow, that's just incredible. I wonder if I could do something like that. And maybe your thing is not to open an orphanage in Ghana. It doesn't actually matter. Maybe your thing is to, ensure that the local river is, all the shopping trolleys are pulled out of it, and the fish can live there. It doesn't actually matter what it is. But it's about making these things obtainable and aspirational, and I think that's where we have to go next. And I think that means that it has to be more positive and a lot less doom-mongering.
So Passion for the Planet really is a solution-based radio platform. You don't work within, you don't like the politics of fear. You love focusing on solutions, rock and roll, and all the good news out there that there is.
Absolutely. I mean, like you, it's positive.
Right.
And bad things happen sometimes, and you have to, mention some of the bad things because that's just part of the world. But it's about not going, oh, bad things happen, now how long can we dwell on it, or who can we blame? It's about saying, well, okay, bad things happened, but you know what? Here's maybe a positive, or here's something that we could learn from it, or here's something else that could be done instead, and so on. So, definitely, it's about looking for the positive.
Hey, speaking of the positive, it's our experience here so far, Chantal, in the United States, that UK and Europe is ahead of us, and it's become more cultural and DNA based with generations before it has come here to this side of the world. What is right now the attitude towards green in the UK? Is it growing? Is it stable? Is it fading? What do you feel the pulse of green is right now in the UK?
It was growing a lot, and I think it sort of stabilized a little bit. And, of course, part of that is to do with the recession and so on, when people's focus is somewhere else.
Right.
Our current coalition government are not really making it not making it a big priority in the way that they originally sort of implied that they would. But again, all bets were off the minute we had a hung parliament, so that's kind of changed everything. So I think and obviously with cuts in government and things like that, then a lot of the cuts are happening to government departments which deal with environmental issues. I think the other sad thing is that journalists in particular are getting quite jaded about it. So if a company talks about something that's doing green, it's kind of like, oh, yawn, sort of, so what, nothing new about that, who cares? And I think they're beginning to look for whatever the next thing is going to be. So I think that it's in danger of stalling in terms of its awareness and its growth. I think the other danger is that people now think that they're doing something. There's enough awareness out there that they go, oh, well, I recycle, and that means they feel like they've ticked the environmental box. But actually, being environmental and thinking about your impact on the planet is way more than just recycling. It's I don't need to tell you this, but it's lots and lots and lots of different things.
That's right.
And I think too often we're just kind of going, oh yeah, I do this one thing, that's fine. And the fact that we don't jump in our car and fly in an aeroplane and eat lots of steak and so on, it sort of washes over our heads. We still think of ourselves as environmental. And I think that's where the challenge is yes, okay, there's a good broad-based understanding, but it has to go further than this, because clearly, no one yet is doing what needs to be done, and as individuals, we're not really doing enough.
Chantal, one of the little secrets that our listeners don't know yet is that you're also an author. So, when we started this show, Mike and I had to ask people to come on it. Now we have numerous requests because there's not enough good platforms in the United States for people who have a good green message or a campaign or a company that's launching, or even people who are the thought leaders, the writers. They all want a chance to platform their message. You wrote a book last year called PR Demystified, and obviously you've had this wonderful platform for 8 years. What can you share with our listeners if they want to get a message out or a green promotion? What can you share? What pearls of wisdom can you share with our listeners on the PR demystification issue that you wrote about?
I think to me, there are sort of three different types of PR, if you like. So one of them is what I call reactive PR, then there's proactive PR, and then there's piggyback PR. So just to define those. So reactive PR is when basically there is a news story. Something has happened and you can then talk about it. So, I don't know, you've won an award or you've launched a new product or there's a new invention or something like that. That's the obvious place for PR, and that's definitely areas in which you should be looking for your company or your idea or whatever it happens to be. So that's the news-based stuff. However, most people don't have a huge amount of that. If you invent something, the chances are you invent it once, and then obviously the next few years are spent hopefully building a business around it and selling it. But you're effectively doing the same thing, obviously, day in, day out. You're developing and selling your product. So then what do you do? So the next type of PR is the proactive stuff, and that's where you basically have good advice to give somebody. So as an example, I could do a press release about good advice on PR, or you could do good advice on being more sustainable or green in the home or something like that. So it's not news-based. I could send that press release out today, tomorrow, next year, next week, doesn't really matter. But it's full of really good advice, and it's not just promoting my company or my product or whatever. It's actually saying, look, here are some useful things that you could do. So that's also a good way of doing PR, because there are plenty of magazines and programs and so on that want to look for basically pure editorial content which is useful to their audience.
Got it.
And then the third type is the piggyback PR, and that's basically where you piggyback off somebody else's thing. So, for example, in the UK, we had a budget recently, and lots of accountants piggyback off the back of that by emailing all the journalists saying, if you want to comment on what the budget means, I can talk about this, or there might have been something where a certain type of tax was cut or was increased, and again they send out a press release going, this means this and this to these types of people, or will save this amount of money, or cost that amount of money. So in other words, you piggyback off the back of something else, and that something else can be big things like a budget, or even a movie release, or an anniversary, or even more sort of broadly, perhaps the weather, or the fact that it's sunny at the moment and therefore people want to wear their bikinis and want to lose weight. So it's about thinking about those three areas: the news, good advice, and then the piggyback. And those, I think, are the three. If you think in those ways, you should be able to find yourself having, a press release every month at least.
Well, that's very, very helpful information. Chantal, we're down to the last 4 minutes or so. Can you share with us a little bit of the visibility on the future of Passion for the Planet and where you intend to take this to the next level?
Obviously, considering to build the radio station is definitely an important part of it, because I do think that there's lots of opportunity there for people to learn more and to have more ideas and be inspired. Also, what we're doing is we're building the passionforfreshideas.com website, and we're putting on lots of the interviews that we've recorded over the past few years, because in the last 8 years, I think I've done 6,000 interviews, so they won't all go on the site, but a large number of those interviews are still relevant today and will be made available on Passion for Fresh Ideas, and then people can come there and they can take it when they want it, because obviously the thing about a radio station is, if you miss it when it goes out live, you've missed it, but the great thing about making it on demand is you get a second chance, and then I hope that's going to build into a really big resource for people, so that, whatever information or advice they might need or ideas they might want to hear about, they're there as podcasts that people can listen to. So I think that's sort of the next stage for us is building that up and making our content even more accessible. And for our listeners out there, where can they listen to? How do they tune into Passion for the Planet? for most people, I mean, in the UK, you can listen on what's known as DAB radio, which is what's replacing FM. But internationally, then it's passionfortheplanet.com.
Perfect.
Is where you can actually listen to the stream live, and then passionforfreshideas.com, where you can download the individual podcast if you just want to listen to a specific interview.
That is wonderful. And for all our listeners out there here in the U.S., you can't get enough great green radio. So please go to those websites and get some of that 6,000 interviews. That's amazing. We're down to the last 2 minutes, Chantal. What would you like? What pearls of green wisdom that have you learned along the way that you'd like to share with our listeners as we say a too early goodbye?
For me, it's always about do something. So don't sit there and go, oh, it won't make any difference because I'm so small and my actions don't matter. It's always about start and do something. And it doesn't really matter what it is you do. It's just about always starting and doing something. And once you've done that, everything else becomes easier. So I think that's the thing that I would like to sort of inspire people to do, is just take some kind of action, no matter how small you might think it is.
Well, that's amazing. And like I said to our listeners, passionfortheplanet.com. It's spelled the way it is, PASSION, fortheplanet.com. And Chantal's new website, passionforfreshideas.com. It's going to have all 6,000 of her shows loaded up on there. You can't get enough good green media. Chantal Cooke, we are so appreciative and honored today to have you from across the shores from the UK on Green is Good today. Chantal Cooke, you are truly living proof that green is good.
Thank you very much. I've loved being on the show.